In part 1 of this video, we looked at the beginner and Godlands dungeons that have been reconstructed. Here, we are going to continue by taking a look at the epic dungeons, Woodlab, Sea Depths, and D-Docks. These dungeons are no longer once per realm, and they're now guaranteed drops from some new enemies in Godlands, similar to the Headless Horseman that drops Cemetery. These enemies are the Great Owl for W-Lab, Sting Spider for Sea Depths, and Corsair Crab for D-Docks. The main difference you'll notice when clearing W-Lab is that the turret trees have a delay before shooting where they flash. The rest of the enemies are pretty similar to the old one. Another big difference is the T-Room is no longer a chest. The Swarm Tree is activated when you first shoot it, but it's wise to clear out as many of the minions beforehand as possible. Mines will spawn on the ground around the tree at various ranges, and the tree will also throw AoE attacks. The mines don't do damage until they turn from green to purple. The main boss still goes through 3 different stages of metamorphosis, just like the old W-Lab. During the first stage, you shouldn't really have any problem. In the second stage, there's one phase where the boss goes to the middle and fires a ton of white shots. These ignore defense and will kill you very quickly if you get caught in them, so be wary of the confused shots from some of the small butterflies. During the third stage, make sure you're moving away from the boss when it's changing phases. One of the possible phases quickly jumps on the nearest player and shoots a shotgun that will insta-pop any character, even an 8-8. I think pretty much everybody that did W-Labs when they first reworked it died to this at least once to learn that lesson. Sea Depths has the same webbed areas as Spider Den throughout that will slow you down if you walk on them, which can be annoying if you're trying to rush. There's also 5 different large spiders that inflict different status effects. One of them quiets and one of them armor breaks, so make sure you know which ones these are before trying to rush. T-Room is still basically the same as before, it's just a cluster of golden eggs and it's not a guaranteed spawn. The boss fight has changed considerably. You can no longer paralyze the boss, and you can no longer break all 4 eggs before activating. Instead, you have to kill 1 egg to make the boss vulnerable, and then you can DPS the boss for 1/4 of its HP and repeat this pattern. Just like the old Sea Depths, each egg gives the boss a different status effect that is removed when you break the egg. One of the eggs will randomly have a web around it, and it must be broken last. It's generally best to break the green egg first if it doesn't have the web, because this gives the boss speedy, so breaking it will make it move much slower and make it more manageable. All of the eggs, as well as the eggs in T-Room, drop the white bags, so make sure to try and get soulbound on all of them if you're going for those. You'll also notice the web around the Sea Depths will change throughout the fight to inflict different status effects, kinda like how an Urgel's lines change. There are also gaps in the web during certain phases where it's now possible to move through it without being guaranteed to get hit and get slowed or whatever the effect is. D-Docks is easily the epic dungeon with the most changes. There's no longer a DPS check at the end to get into Bilgewater, so it could technically be soloed on any character. There's also a much wider variety of enemies which are much more dangerous than anything in the original D-Docks. There's still a guaranteed T-Room with the chest, although there's no longer a maze through the evil water. The chest will appear on an island resembling a skull, and will become vulnerable once all the enemies on this island are killed. The most notable new enemy is easily the Calamity Crab. There's one guaranteed in each dungeon that wanders around randomly. The Calamity Crab is more dangerous than anything in the dungeon, including the boss. It moves quickly, destroys obstacles, and has a plethora of high damage shots. It's also immune to debuffs like slow, paralyze, stun, etc. So if you drag the crab to spawn or boss room, it will go invulnerable for a few seconds and back away. So this is technically the safest way to kill the crab, although it'll take much longer than just dragging it around will. Bilgewater himself has some new phases, but none are really particularly difficult. There are no longer the parrots that respawn if you don't do enough DPS, instead there's just one phase where parrots appear and you have to kill them to be able to damage the boss more. There are also a lot of cannonballs that shoot out of the walls that make the fight feel much more like a true bullet hell. That's it for the reconstructed dungeons as of the time of recording. Deca has announced that the next 2 dungeons to be reconstructed will be the Lair of Draconis and Mountain Temple. There have been many other dungeons that have received small tweaks or changes. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I want to wrap up the video by quickly going through some more important ones. In 03, decoys no longer work on Gemsbach. If you try to decoy, they'll disappear after just a split second. In Void, the all now ends phase has been shortened significantly, so there's only 2 big boys that get thrown out instead of 6 total minions. In Cult, you only need to get 3 flames to activate T-Room, so it makes it go quite a bit faster. In Crystal Cavern, the mini-bosses now show up in a set order. The first mini-boss will always be either Gummy Bear or Dinosaur, then the second will be either Fish or Scorpion, and the third will always be Monstrosity. Gummy Bear and Dinosaur now go to one of 5 spots instead of the same spot every time. Scorpion spawns a bunch of little scorpions and you have to shoot the flashing one in order to make the boss vulnerable. In Secluded Thicket, the third boss rotate phase is randomized so the safe spot isn't in the same spot every time. Also, in second boss, the bluebird now goes to a random corner instead of always going to top right first. Lastly, 10A now drops from third boss of Thicket instead of first.